I was working before on an ABE experiences where we have like one stage and then we pre-measured everything. We put it in the Unity, tried to fit it manually to the real world space, and then we got like one application that works just for one real world room. With our technology, you build it once and then you can play it in every room in the world.
Welcome to a new episode of XR and AI Spotlight, the show where we give the stage to the founders and makers who are pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. My name is Gabriele Romagnoli, I'm your host, and I'm here today with MORTIZ Loss. MORTIZ has a background in software engineer and worked at Mercedes Tech Motion to bring XR experiences into the car. He is now the co-founder of 2Sync, a company that has developed an SDK for mixed reality experiences that allows to automatically adapt virtual content to any physical location. A bit like website and app responsive design adapts to your mobile or desktop, but for spatial computing. In this conversation, we dive into how digital and physical blend together. We discuss the three different types of MR experiences.
For me, there are like three different levels of mixed reality application. So one where you have like just content floating in the air while you see the real world, like pass through. The other way is like when the application overlaps a real world object. So it's like trying to find one real world object that can be enhanced with digital content, like piano vision, for example. You have a real piano and like the virtual piano is mapped one-to-one to on top of it. And then you can see the key that needs to be pressed in which time, and you can easily learn piano. And that's a great example for mixed reality. And the third one is like
how to finally get the user to move around the physical space, even when in full virtual reality.
You need to follow some guidelines, I would say, like design guidelines, because what we have always found out with our game House Defender, the user is not familiar with walking around in the VR space. So you somehow need to explain him that everything is now safe, because every real-world object is like obfuscated and you can just walk around and you can even touch it.
And the many applications that adaptive mixed reality unlocks beyond gaming.
From a forensic professor, and he wants to use our technology to use the real-world room to place automatically evidences in the room. That's like a perfect case for, let's say, training. Imagine like training scenarios for firefighters.
But before we get into it, I want to thank our sponsor Meshi, who made this episode possible. Meshi is a real powerhouse for generating 3D assets with AI. You can start with a simple text or image prompt and get high-quality, stylized model in just a minute. One feature that I personally love is the ability to create stylized textures for any mesh, with or without UV, and since the release of Meshing 2.5, pro users can even edit only section of the generated textures with just a text prompt. Try it out, go to meshi.ai, start the 7 days trial, and after that, use the code XRAI20 to get 20% off your subscription. And now, it's time to roll the title and welcome MORTIZ under the spotlight. MORTIZ, it is great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Gabriel, for the introduction, and nice to meet you again. I'm looking forward to our podcast and your questions.
We are now in a time where mixed reality has taken the main stage, with Quest 3 becoming mainstream and with the Vision Pro pushing the content of spatial computing into our living room. Our physical space is getting more and more importance. So I would like to ask you, how are currently, let's say, XR team designing and developing these mixed reality experiences, and how are they actually using the physical space around the user?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, there are like three different levels of mixed reality application. So one where you have like just content floating in the air while you see the real world, like pass through. A good example for this is like Cubism or any other puzzle game where you relax on the sofa and you have your mixed reality content in front of you, and then you can puzzle your game and you can immersive, and it's really cool. But there's no physical context for it. And the another level is like when the other way is like when the application overlaps a real world object. So it's like trying to find one real world object that can be enhanced with digital content, like piano vision, for example. You have a real piano, and like the virtual piano is mapped one-to-one to on top of it. And then you can see the key that needs to press in which time, and you can easily learn piano. And that's a great example for mixed reality. And the third one is like a more advanced integration of the real world. What actually we are doing also is House Defender, our game, or like First Encounters, the sample from Meta, or The World Beyond, where the app is really interacting with the real world, and you can play around with your actual space.
And you are bringing up under a good point, right? So I actually haven't structured this in this way, and I think it's really valuable to look at it. So there is one way in which technically the digital content has no real relationship with the physical environment, like, for example, a floating screen or something that could be like Cubism or many other, to be honest, mixed reality games. Then there is this one where there is actually a meaning, right? In this case, piano vision, and one more instead, and gets more complex because then it is really depending on a space that changes, right? Every user has a different space, and that is, I think, one of the complicated aspects. Windows, doors, walls, just totally, a simple area of it, right? And I mean, just sort of curiosity, what are, you think, like some of these good examples so far? So of these three different types of mixed reality experiences that, let's say, over the past 2 years or more, let's say, caught your attention, I think were particularly well done.
Yeah, I actually have thought it already. Like for the first one, I would say Cubism is really great, or like puzzling places. You chill out on the sofa and puzzling around, and still see when your friend is coming in, or you see the glass on the table, so there's no problem of bumping into something, and you can really, immersive, cool game. The context-based, object-based mixed reality sample would be piano vision from my perspective. Or like there's a new app coming, was presented. The same, like similar to piano vision, but for a drum. So you have like a digital drum, and then it's like teaching you how to drum. And then the third one is like, I really like First Encounters. And our new game will be also going in a similar direction, where you like the wall breaks down, and then you can have a world beyond your real world room. And I really like this idea.
That's really nice. And by the way, there is also another aspect. Okay, so we're going to discuss about your game for sure. We're going to discuss another thing about puzzling places, a concept about puzzling places, because that also adds co-located mixed reality. There is another layer of let's say, value, and at the same time complexity that's being added to these apps. And before we go there, right, before we ask all these questions, the core thing that already came out is, and the core problem is the fact that the space changes, right? So when we talk about to sync, right, and we talk about an experience that adapts to the environment, what are we actually talking about? So what is this adaptive mixed reality? And actually, why do you need it?
Yeah, good question. Because there is no really good definition for it. So like we integrated this term for ourselves. So it's like auto-adaptive mixed reality. Because there's one definition, probably the reality virtuality continuum from Milgram, like 20 years ago, where you have on the one side, you have AR, on the other side, you have VR. In between, there's mixed reality. But usually mixed reality is used to place something on top of an object. What we are doing is replacing the real world object with digital objects. So, and when you can do it with one object, for example, a table, but you can do it also with all objects in your room. So you have like, then you have like a full VR experience with the layout of your real world room, with the shape of your objects. And that is what we are calling adaptive mixed reality. But because you can just walk around and you can see and perceive the real world, while being in a completely immersive world. It's like a second skin over reality.
It's interesting though, because then if me as a developer or a designer have that information, I could keep the table there as physical, or I could replace it. So, I mean, how does that digital layer is superimposed? Is that everything then becomes replaced, or is that like a specific object I can pick? I mean, can you maybe tell me a little bit more of how this actually works?
So that's like the up to the designer of the experience. We provide the possibility to just replace a few objects if you want, or the whole scene. And we can also like so as our let's say superpower. What we are doing at TrueSync is like procedurally generating the physical world with digital content. So like let's say like the real world maps your virtual experience. So then you can do it with all your objects, and you're completely immersed. You can do it only with one object. Then you can walk around, and then you have like a virtual table where you can put some objects on it, and then interact with it. That's up to the designer at the end.
Okay. And maybe still again from the tool, from the SDK perspective, right? How does that work? I mean, what kind of information that is fetched from the device in terms of, is that the geometry? Does it, let's say, somehow mark it as a specific kind of object? So what does the developer get extra when he uses, let's say, TrueSync?
So what we are providing are like, let's say, 3 different building blocks, but let's say. So first of all, we need a digital representation of the real world room. So, and that can be scanned by our own approach of scanning the room. So then it's like a controller base, but it can also use the scan of the scene understanding from Meta. But at the end, you need a digital room representation that matches the shape and the size and the objects and amount of objects. So with this given scan, you need somehow like an room-independent description of your experience. That is how we are calling it. So the designer or the game developer needs to find another representation how he describes the experiences. Usually, they are having their game engine, let's say Unity, for example, and then they place their objects statically in the scene. This changes with us, and they need to describe them in a parametric way. So let's say they have a table in their experiences, and then they can say, okay, the height of the table should be between 1 or 2 meters, but the best height would be 1.5 meter, let's say, and close to any chair. And then we have like different constraints and conditions how to describe it, and then with this room independent description and scan of the room, both needs to come together, and then we need to find like the perfect match between the described virtual object and the given set of real world objects. And that is like an optimization problem we solve for the developer to find the best mapping between both sets that represents the idea of the designer the best.
Right. And that I imagine, for example, like a wall of it is at least this long, or an empty space that is at least this long, or an empty area in the floor, and something like this, right? And
exactly.
Understood.
The biggest space in the room, the longest wall, like the nearest table to a wall, like the nearest object set, something like this. So a lot of relations that you can define, and then you put some costs on it, and then you can say the experiences, or like the mapping with the less costs at the end is the perfect match or the perfect placement of your virtual object onto the real world object. And at the end, with given the mapping, you need somehow like a procedural generation of your virtual object. And there we provide like 60 or 70, I don't have it in mind, generic building rules that you can easily drag and drop into. And then it's like saying, okay, instead of just stretching one box to, I don't know, like 3 meters, I can also place 3 boxes next to each other to just giving it like having a more convincing representation. And it just like looks ugly when you stretch some objects in the real world.
Understand.
So it's
So, so then let's say that as a designer, as a developer, I have this extra power or knowledge. The questions still remain, right? What is actually needed to integrate the living room in an immersive experience? I mean, what are the things that you have seen that it works?
What do you mean? Can you explain again?
So what do you need to properly add digital content in a space in terms of from a design perspective, right? What are the things that you should take into consideration?
It's like you need to follow some guidelines, I would say, like design guidelines, because what we have always or like found out with our game House Defender that the user is not familiar with walking around in the VR space. So you somehow need to explain him that everything is now safe because every real world object is like obfuscated and you can just walk around and you can even touch it. So it's like more like from a design perspective, you need to teach the user, okay, it's fine and it's safe to walk around.
You need to build trust with the user, basically.
Exactly. That's it. And yeah, one really important point is that somehow your virtual object matches the characteristic of the real world object. So think about placing a solid looking virtual table onto a plant, onto a real world plant. So that doesn't make sense because the user thinks, okay, I can put down my controller there, or I can even sit down on this object, but that wouldn't be the perfect match. And you know what I mean.
Right.
So you need to, make sure that this is not the case. And of course, that every object is replaced, and that you don't miss any real world object in the room.
Okay. And unless, I mean, I think you could always think of playing out with that concept of maybe something that is, I mean, use that as a game mechanic, right?
Yeah.
So that obviously, because that's also another thing about these opportunities that this technology unlocks for is also to play around and bend the laws of physics. So what is, let's say, necessarily known to the players. And we have been talking about games so far, right? Because let's say that being the Quest a mostly gaming platform, that's many of the experiences that come out. But are there other use cases where you have seen, for example, mixed reality adding value to an immersive experience that was not a game?
Also for me personally, I would say like most of the full immersive VR experiences can benefit from adapting it to the real world. Nevertheless, if it's gaming or education or whatever, it's like imagine playing, for example, Super Hot while hiding behind your real world furniture. It just makes it more interesting, and you can just walk naturally around. And it's somewhat like a safety feature. So you don't need to clean up the space, and you can just use it as it is. And you're just always aware of like real world objects in your play space. But beside games, I find training and social experiences can benefit the most of it. So like as soon as multiple people are together in the same space, content needs to be somehow anchored to the space. So like a co-location experience. So
okay. So we're talking about people physically located in the same space.
In the same space, exactly. And that's like a perfect case for, let's say, training. Imagine like training scenarios for firefighters. So in a corner of your room or on your house, there's like starting a fire. And while moving freely with such standalone device, the firefighter can walk around and even can train, analyze, and optimize their real-world movement and behavior to prepare them for the emergency case. So I find out. Also, I really like the walking part of our solution, so that you can just freely walk around, and this is like perfect for training cases.
Right. And that per se doesn't involve that the experience is in mixed reality, right? If I understand correctly, then it could be like a completely virtual room.
Totally, yeah. It could be a completely virtual room,
Correct.
and different scenarios. So let's say it's night, it could be daylight, it could be with smoke, without smoke, whatever.
I just wanted to have a quick break to remind you that the recording of these episodes and many more great conversation with incredible experts are available on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. Just head over to my profile or in the episode description below and pick the platform you prefer. And now let's get back to the show.
You can do everything in the digital world, and that makes it so special. And while moving freely around, that the training scenarios can benefit quite a lot, because then you also can be together in the space. You see your friends, you see your colleagues, and try to find the best movement behavior together.
And you brought up something interesting, because, for example, I've thought that this object replacement in a way was more of a something that would work in mixed reality, right? Of course, it does work in mixed reality and it adds value, but there is no reason why that wouldn't be for VR in a fully virtual environment. And this also, in a way, solves what is one of the problems of virtual reality: the fact that, as you said, you don't know what's the environment around yourself. And so many of these experiences, even though they would benefit from the user moving around, at the end, they are all standing experiences.
Exactly, yeah.
They are also this. I don't know if it's like designed, but the user always like teleports around, right? It is. There was. I remember when I got the first HTC Vive, I was like, okay, you need to have a big play space. But then I realized that, but I never move. I'm always standing around. I need to force myself to move. When I do move, I feel super immersed. That's the moment that really like, oh my God, I'm really there. Because you peek behind a wall, you do all these movements, but something that indeed having the game be more aware of the actual physical space could then add value also if it's a VR experience.
Totally, because like natural movement feels always better. And with like teleportation movements, or like you have also like with the joystick movement, a lot of people just get motion sick, and just walking naturally around your space solves this problem. And that's also one really cool thing about it.
Yeah. And so you mentioned one important point being the multiplayer aspect, or at least when two users are physically located in the same space. Is that what happens when someone joins remotely, for example? Is that something that ToSync handles?
So in general,
so let's say me and you, we are in the same room, right? And then someone joins. I mean, was I clear? Was my question clear?
Yeah, totally. It was clear.
Okay.
So in general, like our SDK, what we are calling like our tools to create this room independent experiences, are completely platform independent and service independent. But multiplayer is a really good advantage of what we are doing. So we build on top of our SDK like an interface, like a network interface that can easily be used to create these co-location experiences and supports our ToSync SDK. And to make it possible that we both can play together in one space, we need to align our local rooms together. So let's say you're standing in the same room, I'm standing in the same room, and then we need to match these rooms together. So and we provide some tools for it. So what we are doing and what we found out works quite well is using the room corners, for example. The objects in your room that are scanned to find the best matching of your digital room and my digital room, and to find how we are centered to the room. And then we know each other's location easily. But we have also integrated a shared spatial anchor from technology from Meta, so you can use both ways. That's easy.
Regarding shared spatial anchors, I think that there are really like a lot of other apps that could potentially could benefit from this. And I was wondering if you have some, I don't know, if you have some tips or something you could share on how to better manage or implement that in other games. Are there some learnings that maybe could be valuable for you to share?
Probably. I would follow the sample code from Meta itself. They have cool like that the shared spatials sample, shared spatial anchor sample on GitHub. Just have a look there and try to attach like re-implement it in your game, and then it's quite straightforward.
So you mentioned also that to sync is platform agnostic, if you said correctly, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So with more headset coming, right? So do you see, are there differences? So if I'm developing for Quest or HTC or Pico, or I'm going to develop for Vision Pro, or maybe the next headset that Google is going to come out with, right? So what are there core differences when implementing something like this?
Totally. One point is just the different hardware. Like let's say, for example, the pass-through, also the pass-through quality. So not every game works with every headset. Because imagine like the step from Quest 2 to Quest Pro to Quest 3, like a completely mixed reality app with the Quest 2 or with the Pico is not that good compared to the Quest 3, because on the Pico side, for example, it's only mono pass-through. So that makes from the hardware side a huge difference. And what we figured out during developing our SDK is that because we want to provide it hardware agnostic to every developer, we need the challenge is to support platform-specific functionality and having always like a fallback solution for other devices at the same time. I was already mentioning this shared spatial anchor solution from Meta. That's like for co-location. But for Pico, that doesn't work, of course, or if you don't have a network connection. So you need to find another way of doing co-location, and therefore we provide our room corner-based alignment. Or the same with the scanning approach of Meta. The scene understanding works fine, but it just works on the Meta side and not on the Pico or Google Glass or whatever. So it's always better to find a solution that works for all platforms that can be improved in the same time for the Meta devices and the Pico devices, and we'll always benefit from it.
Yeah. So you were also talking about indeed the scanning of the room, right? Being, of course, a core thing. Well, one thing that just came to me is that, of course, you also have these objects that are in the room. And if I understood correctly, right now it's basically like controller based. So when you are in creating your room setup, you have, okay, this is a block and it's a table. This is a block and it's my couch. This is instead a cabinet or a lamp or a window or a door. Right. This is basically how you add these elements. Now, recently, also Meta released this semantic labeling, right? Where basically you walk in, and the magic happens. You don't need to scan anything. It's already known what object is with, of course, certain degree of accuracy that we will figure out. But that's another thing. That's going to be big.
That would be perfect and awesome. I would love it. Because
why there is conditional? Why would be? I mean, we have seen it. Come on, it's coming, right?
Yeah, it's coming, but it's not out yet, so we can't try it out. I wait since like 2 years on this point that something like this happens. I was really excited about the room plan API from Apple, where you just use your phone, scan it, and then all these bounding boxes and the digital representation of your room happens automatically. Right. But we can't use it as a developer on the headset right now. So and I would love, I love this fact that the automatic scanning system just will happen soon. And then it's like the hurdle of scanning every object is just gone, because it's like the painful thing for the end user. He's asked to okay, scan your whole room and your whole flat in a controller-based way. That's like annoying for the user.
Yeah.
So
Indeed, I mean, and I think it's gonna open up other creative opportunities in the sense like what are people gonna know when that knowledge is so accessible? Because maybe if I'm a user, I'm just putting a table on my couch, but when I know that there is a frame or like a portrait, let's say, or a shelf, then I think all those information also something that could be, let's say, quite creatively being used by developers to add digital content in our space. So now, you mentioned that maybe can you give us some example of some of the things that people have been building using TwoSync, high level? What kind of, it's mostly games, or what kind of other immersive experience have been using this adaptive scanning?
mm, um, I can give you like an interesting example. We've received a request from a forensic professor, and he wants to use our technology to use the real-world room to place automatically evidences in the room, like footsteps or fingerprints. And then the students should try to find out what happened in this room. So it's like a training scenario for forensic students. And the great thing is here that every real-world location will be automatically somehow a total new training scenario for the student. So you can play or train this game or train the scenario in your kitchen and find out what happened there, and then going to the living room, and then there's another sample. And so your reality provides like actually the the training scenario. And I really love this example. And on the other way, or on the other side, gaming is quite common, and especially like the showcase factor of it. It's quite innovative and quite new. So we have a lot of projects with, or did a lot of projects also with like Siemens or Ericsson, where they use it as a showcase for their booth. So we transform their booth on an exhibition into something walkable and fully immersive. And then a lot of people coming there, they can see each other in a multiplayer co-location experiences. And then they have like, for example, Ericsson was asking for to tell the story about 5G. How could the experiences look like if we would pre-render it on the cloud and then just send the image to the VR headset? And yeah, the co-location aspect is quite magnetic.
And and I think we also, again, you make me think about another aspect that we usually tend to think about our living room, but then I think we should think broadly about location based. So, and location based is indeed a booth at a conference. It could be a store, right?
Yeah.
Because if then I have an app that I could send to all my stores, and I don't need to worry about the layout of the specific thing. Stuff is going to come up, and whatever that's going to be, the user is going to wear the headset and get the same story, get a similar experience. That is actually very powerful. I wouldn't be surprised if indeed from the commerce, let's say, or others, there will be like significant interest in just deploying these cases that is not just constrained to our living room.
Yeah, totally. So like up to now, the only possibility for like having this location-based experiences was just to building this application manually for one specific room in the world. So I was working before on an LBE experiences where we have like one stage, and then we pre-measured everything. We put it in the Unity, tried to fit it manually to the real-world space, and then we got like one application that works just for one real-world room. With our technology, you build it once, and then you can play it in every room in the world. And I guess that can be quite interesting for a few people.
I would say more than a few.
Hopefully.
And look, another point is that I'm always fascinated is, I mean, building games is cool, right? And overall, so why building a company that creates an SDK and not just your own game as the core thing. I mean, how has it been to being like an enabler for XR teams?
Yeah, it just kind of like, because I was like in the same situation, it was really pain for me to measure out everything, like manually rebuilding all the stuff. And then my vision was, okay, automatize this process and as giving it to other developers that they have the opportunity and the possibility to create these fully automatically in another way. So that's just from my personal side. I want to do this and I like to do this. Of course, from a company side, it's way easier to create apps instead of an SDK for developers, because having all these complex functionality, it's really hard to create like an intuitive interface and to convince others to actually use it and that it is worth putting a little bit more effort in it. Because the result is way cooler. But if nobody knows the result is cooler and that you can make money off it, no one will use it. So that's like the main challenge here. And that's why we are also like using our own technology to showcase, okay, we can create cool projects with well-known partners to create valuable projects.
Yeah. Let me actually, because this is like two more questions that I have, being exactly about creating cool stuff to showcase what are the possibility. I mean, you were at the Meta Presence platform, right? At the hackathon.
The hackathon, yeah.
Yeah, the hackathon. You remember correctly, if I remember. What was your experience? How did it go? Can you tell us?
Yeah. Actually, we were gamifying the most boring task and built a vacuum cleaning mixed reality experience. So we attached one controller to like a vacuum device, a vacuuming device, and then you just run around to clean up the space. So like we gamified like a daily work. And this idea I had already a while in my mind because I vacuum the apartment like every week, let's say. But to be honest, I can't see the dust. Unfortunately, my girlfriend can. So she's always complaining if I miss some spots. And that was like a perfect use case for mixed reality. So we let like grass growing on every part of the floor. And then you have like your vacuum cleaning device, and then it's like cutted. So you know where you have been already, and it's quite fun to see how you cut grass in your living room. And actually at the end we won also the hackathon in the category productivity. So it was overall a really cool experience.
Interesting. I don't know if I would categorize that as productivity, but probably that's also the purpose, right? Gamifying boring task up to a level where you become productive.
Exactly, yeah. So. Yeah, we made this crazy. We came up with the idea, okay, you cannot only gamify vacuuming, you can also like gamify different cores, like also clean up your room. And then it could be some like how I should call it, like for parents to give the kids the opportunity to play around. And let's say they need to vacuum first the room before they can play their mixed reality game that they love, or they need to clean up the space before. So it's like that's why we could put it on the productivity category, and yeah, it was quite fun.
Right. No, I mean, I think it makes sense, and it's not even too much of a stretch. So I was just trying to. It's interesting to see how, let's say, this mixed reality content can be adapted to so many different use cases. And since we are still talking about games, the point is that your game just came out, right? That uses exactly the 2Sync technology. What is this game about? And tell us something more.
Yeah. We just released our new title called Mix Snowworld. That transforms your real environment step by step into a snow world. In the middle of our discussion, I was saying, okay, that the user is not familiar with going around, and that's why we are beginning in a full real world pass-through mode. And you see everything, And during the game, it slowly transforms into a one-to-one frosty representation of your reality. And have some interaction with the room. So you need to defend the space, and or like monsters coming and try to make your room virtual. And you need to defend this and avoid that this will happen. So you can feel free to download it and try it out by yourself. It's just free.
Absolutely. And I think it's always good to understand and learn and try these experiences, because then you could, for example, okay, let me try in my own studio, let me try in my living room, let me try in another bedroom, and then see and understand how actually the whole environment gets readapted.
Exactly. It looks different, but it behaves the same. So that's also like our technology. I always try to compare to websites. So let's say you have like a website that it looks different on a mobile device compared to a big screen like a computer, but the content is the same. It's similar for our games. So every room is different. So the application will looks a little bit different, but at the end, the content and the story and the game is similar. So that's the big point. What we are doing, like websites for 3D, let's say like this.
Well, that's not a little statement to say, I think that when we are thinking about indeed spatial experiences overall, right, then mixed reality is going to have a more and more important role. So at that point, then we will discover that there is this need, like in a mobile, like on a website, to readapt this content to our physical space. So, I mean, I think that there is honestly not a better note to finish and close these episodes. And I actually encourage everybody to check out in the description below the game. Can you say again the name?
Yeah, it's like Mix No Worlds.
Mix No Worlds.
Yeah,
perfect.
And it's again like the multiplayer game that you can just enjoy with your friends in the same space.
Nice. Or your kids. So I think I have something to play right now.
Cool. Great. I would love to hear feedback.
I will. You certainly will. And likely also, like, you will see pop up a video online very soon. Don't worry.
Cool.
MORTIZ, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time and for the nice talk.
It was a real pleasure. And best of luck. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you enjoyed the conversation, remember to head to YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts for more insightful conversation revolving around XR and AI. And if you like the show, please leave a rating on Spotify. It really helps me keep doing this and shine the spotlights on the latest and greatest founders and creative in XR and AI. Till next time.